how about that, Professor Butler? How about that the Trump administration does not have to get an authorization for the use of military force, according to the logic of the Trump administration lawyers?
So the War Resolutions Power Act says that once the military is used in hostilities, the president has 60 days to either get an extension, get Congress to declare war, or he has to cease operating the hostilities. The Trump administration is saying, well, these aren't really hostilities because we're using drones and thus no U.S. citizens or military folks are at risk. Guess where they got that argument from? The Obama administration, based on some of its operations in Libya.
I'm old enough to remember when Donald Trump was campaigning, saying "No more new wars." He was going to be the peacetime president. No more. And here we are.
Nobel Prize.
The Nobel Prize. He solved it. Yeah.
He's
And
really
here we
taking
are.
his defeat rough, like more in Nigeria.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, so here we are. He bombed Iran. He, has threatened invading Greenland. He's talking about invading Venezuela for regime change. He's bombing cartels, alleged cartels. We don't even know who's on those boats. And now he's talking about putting boots on the ground in Nigeria. I'm not even going to talk about the geopolitics of what's happening in Nigeria. He doesn't know anything about it. But he's now talking about putting boots on the ground, potentially putting boots on the ground to defend Christians there.
Well, it doesn't just stop there. He's also talking about going back into Afghanistan as a way of checking China. And he's also completely abandoning Ukraine, which could in and of itself lead to a whole nother notion of a forever war in Europe if you have a galvanized Russia. This is the greatest flip-flop in the history of modern American politics. He campaigned absolutely on the end of forever war, and instead he has renamed his Department of Defense the Department of War, and it's looking like it now what it is the Department of Forever War.
But are you surprised that some of your former colleagues are not doing more to claw back their powers, their congressional power, their oversight to just, I mean, I know that there was this like partisan briefing where a lot of Republicans, I guess, got to see evidence that this is in the case of the Venezuela boat strikes. We still haven't seen that evidence. I think it's very suspect. We're on the 15th. We're over 60 people murdered. We do not know anything about their backgrounds or the evidence to justify that in any way. But why are they so comfortable allowing this president to take power from them constantly?
So the Republicans are a fully owned subsidiary of Donald Trump at this point. But you used the exact correct word. This is murder. This is not a military exercise. This is not a military strike. This is murder. So the question is, what do the Democrats say they will do when they take control of Congress? I believe one of the things that they should be saying that they will do is not just to investigate these acts in and of themselves, but also investigate those who are authorizing the acts as well. Below the president, every single person involved in these should understand that whether they are a military official in uniform or otherwise, they have a responsibility to the Constitution and they have a responsibility to the law. It is not just their obligation to blindly follow. Exactly. It's not their obligation to just follow every edict given to them right off the bat.
So, Paul, I have a question about all of this, which is it a tacit acknowledgement that they don't have the right to do all of this, that when there were survivors of one of these strikes, they were sent home? That presumably if the survivors were as big, bad, evil, deserving of murder as the administration has claimed, wouldn't they have hung on to them? Are there legal implications revealed from that decision?
Yeah, that they're running scared and they don't want these folks to tell their story, so they're going to send them to another country. What used to happen back, even in Trump 1.0, was that when people who were accused of importing drugs illegally to the country, guess what? They were arrested. They had due process. They had trials. Now, the Trump administration seems to be on the verge of declaring these folks enemy combatants, which means that they could be summarily killed with no due process, no legal recourse.
What do you make of the fact that that they keep releasing the videos as well? Because I find it very sinister, right? Like I've covered a lot of American military operations over my years overseas. Every single time that the American military has been carrying out these strikes in open waters, they have been releasing the video, and it's almost propagandistic, and it's playing to a base that I think is I'm just curious to get your thoughts on it because I find it very disturbing that they're doing
It's disgusting that they're doing it, again, because this is murder. Let's not forget, even when George W. Bush had the great lie of weapons of mass destruction, even then he still went to Congress to authorize the war in Iraq. As disastrous as that was, they are doing this in a completely unlawful manner, but they're also taking a tactic from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that went on too long, which are the notion of signature attacks. They don't know who's on these boats. They're looking at the way they are maneuvering themselves at the time of day that they are doing so, and they're killing them just based off of that evidence. And that's what makes this so scary and, I believe, unlawful.
Well, the other thing that's strange about the release of these videos is, in a way, it undermines the administration's own arguments that they're enemy combatants. You can see on the boats, they're not near American citizens. They're not pointing weapons at Coast Guard. They're nowhere near our shores. In many cases, they look like small boats that maybe fishermen would be on. These do not look like, massive vessels imposing on American military officials. And so in some ways, the images are actually undermining the story we're expected to believe, at least that we're being told by this administration right now.
And they're attempting, what they're trying to do is project this aura of strength and beating themselves on the chest here. And that normally the type of people that do these things, and this is why it's so fitting with the Trump administration, is that it's draft dodgers that always do these things, right? It's the Dick Cheneys of the world. It's the George Bushes of the world. It's the Donald Trumps of the world who are so insecure that they didn't actually rise to the moment to fight in their generation's war, that now they have to do these overly strength-ridden acts each and every day to try to prove themselves. And it's horrible.
And they're not offering any legal justification. In criminal law, if you have a premeditated homicide with no legal justification, it's called first-degree murder.
Thank you, Paul.